why do you do this? Why in live music? And it's something that I've struggled with a little because I have I'm a Virgo. I'm a solutions person. Every time anything's wrong, I want to fix it, you know, and I feel like that applies in a very big degree to the state of the world, right? It's like there are serious problems. And so sometimes I think like, well, what am I even doing? Why am I playing music? One of my favorite writers wrote just the other day this really disgruntled piece about how the world is falling apart and people still are just like want to be like rock stars and this and that. And, and that struck me because I was like, yeah, I hear that. Like, why do I have the right? Why shouldn't I actually be back in school figuring out like carbon sequestration or alternative energy production? And I think that all comes back in the end when I really look at it. And what lets me keep doing it is that it is what all the songs in the 60s were about, right? It's that love is the answer, actually. And that if you can create an experience that unlocks for people a sense of place, purpose, just being in touch with themselves. We're in such a disassociated world. Like half of the United States or more is on like drugs to help them deal with the fact that their brain is telling them, run, like you're in the wrong place. And then we label that as a disease. Well, you have depression, take a drug so that you can stay in the wrong place and feel happy about it. If we can get the conversation around who we are, why we're here, what is this experience? Nobody's going to invent the machine that fixes this. The only thing that's going to save us is actually getting the global population to be like, oh, wait a minute. We need to care about each other. We need to care about the earth. Let's approach this from a place of compassion. And then I think we'll be able to solution.
Welcome to today's episode of Unleash Thyself. I am your host, Constantin Morun, and today I'm thrilled to be joined by Justin Handley and Joanne Hunt of SilverMouse, a band that transcends genres to create a truly immersive musical experience. Justin, in addition to being one half of SilverMouse, serves as a director of audio engineering at the Monroe Institute. His work has been pivotal in introducing truly psychoactive music to the world, blending brainwave entrainment technologies with theories on consciousness. Together with Joe, they create SilverMouse's unique blend of live electronica, instruments, and beat frequencies that has captured the attention of audiences worldwide. In our conversation, we will dive into the psychology of psychedelic music, the science behind brainwave entrainment, and how SilverMouse has harnessed these elements to create transformative musical journeys. From the technical aspects to the spiritual essence of their art, Justin and Joe are here to share their in-depth knowledge and inspire us all to connect with music and each other on a deeper level. Prepare to be transported to a world where music becomes a pathway to enlightenment. Let's get started. Welcome back to Unleash Thyself, the podcast that inspires and empowers you to unleash your full potential. I am thrilled to welcome Justin Handley and Joe Hunt. Justin and Joe, we can't wait to hear more about the experiences and insights that have led you to where you are today, and perhaps your unleashed moment, the moment you knew you are on your own path to becoming the best versions of yourselves. It's such a pleasure to have both of you here.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks for having us.
So let's talk a bit about what you do and how you got there. How did you first stumble upon brainwave entrainment? Because that's a topic that, honestly, until you reached out to me, Justin, I wasn't very familiar with.
I mean, you've had a longer journey with that than me by far.
Yeah, I actually got interested in brainwave entrainment somewhere in my 20s. Someone gave me a tape, and I think that it was actually a strange tape. I think that it was a how to quit smoking tape, but I didn't smoke. But it was supposed to be using this crazy mind control technology. And so I just wanted to check it out, and I listened to it, and it was amazing. It transported me to a kind of different place, and I actually got a little obsessive about it. I would play it for everybody. And I think that when I first met Joe, I made her listen to it.
And I was giving up smoking as well, so it was actually quite appropriate. But
That's
it was
good.
Wasn't it with the thing with
Well, it
eyes
wasn't
as
that.
well?
That was different. So I also, somewhere in my interest there, I bought a little thing called the Mind Machine. I don't know if that's what it was called. I know that there is a thing called the Mind Machine now it's a similar thing. It was a little plastic box and it had like 6 settings, and it had glasses with red LED lights inside and headphones. And it basically like played flashing lights at sound at you. And, it was kind of a funny little box because it had like relaxation and kind of meditation and sleep and the normal things you think about. And it also had a setting called roller coaster where it used the lights and the sound to sort of give you this disorienting kind of like feeling of movement.
I remember loving it.
Yeah.
I loved that thing. I don't remember the setting that I loved, but I just loved it. There's a photo of me from like 16, 17 years ago, just like passed out on the futon with these bizarre glasses on. And I remember the feeling, it was like, it's like tripping, it was really like being like inside a video game or something, it was not that I really have experience of that, but it was otherworldly. And I thought, oh, this guy is kind of something else.
So I'm curious. I mean, I guess before I ask that question, can we explain to the audience what brainwave entrainment actually is and why it can benefit you?
Sure. And I think that, before we go there,
Yeah.
it's just worth having a little context because we haven't even mentioned that, with what we're doing right now, we play in a band called SilverMouse, right? And we're playing live music with brainwave entrainment in the live shows. And that's, just to give a little context about where this conversation is coming from. And I think that, for that story, the trajectory was a little bumpy where there was that like, okay, here's what happened 16 years ago. We moved. I lost that tape. I didn't bring the little headphones. I didn't look at brainwave entrainment for decades until actually about a year and a half or 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Very beginning of the pandemic was when it kind of came full circle and back around into our lives.
And so, and that was through largely coincidence. I was looking for work and I applied for a job as a programmer at a place called the Monroe Institute to help them build a mobile app. And lo and behold, they were the source of those tapes 20 years ago. And I didn't even know that, when I was applying for the job. And then I was like, oh, wow, you guys are these people who make the sounds that I liked. And so that's how it kind of came back. But in any case, to answer your question, brainwave entrainment uses what's called a frequency following response, which means that your brain tends to tune itself to the predominant repetitive beat in an environment. And that can be anything. I don't know if you've the tapping people, like that's a form of entrainment. Like if you tap on yourself, your brain will eventually start syncing to that beat. If you play drums, which is one of the oldest forms of psychoactive brainwave entrainment, something that impacts the mind, is like drumming for trance states, or your brain will sync to those beats, and that happens. You can also, in medicine, they use electroshock, probably the most effective form, which is actually pulsing electricity straight into your brain. And this isn't like it's not like the insane asylum, I'm going to zap your brain thing. This is just putting electrodes on. It's like having an EEG that, instead of reading your brain, feeds it back.
Is it the same with that stuff that they're doing now? I forget what they call it, but where it's sort of like light therapy. Where
flashing lights are the same.
Yeah, where they do.
Oh, okay.
Someone I know actually had that they do it a lot for PTSD and trauma, where it's the same concept as the beat, but it's actually a light, and you can kind of reprogram for where your eye looks. Again, it's that same training the brain through this repetitive kind of movement of whether that's sound or light.
And light is actually, in most studies that you look at, light's more effective than sound in terms of brainwave entrainment, but it's less practical.
Also causes epilepsy.
Also causes that. Well,
triggers epilepsy if you. And the tones too.
Yes. So any repetitive beats can theoretically. So, the light's the more effective, or electric shock. But again, these are impractical, whereas everybody's got headphones these days. Everybody's got something that plays music, and so sound is probably the most accessible form of entrainment. And then, I guess the other thing to know about brainwave entrainment is, so what does that mean? You play a beat and your brain starts syncing to it. A brainwave is actually a measurement of, you're firing, I have no idea what the number is. Let's pretend it's a couple 100,000 neurons per second. And that's never going to all sync up. So a brainwave is actually a measurement of the predominant pulse of that, like where you start to get sets of neurons firing together at a certain rhythm. And the your brain runs from about 0 to there's different estimates, but probably at least 60 hertz, which is a beat per second, and could potentially go higher than that, but we don't have the tools to measure that. They used to think it only went up to 40 because they only had the tools to measure up to 40. Now we have better tools, and so now they think it goes up to 160. Nobody really knows what happens above that because we can't measure it yet. And those are associated with different states, starting most simply with like the very low 0, 1, 2, that's deep sleep. As you go up into like 4 to 8, you get into kind of deep meditation. As you go like 8 to 13 hertz beats per second. So as you beat faster, 8 to 13 is kind of like light meditation or relaxedness. 13 to about 30 is what is the range of what happens all the time, standard waking awareness, and then 30 up is what they call gamma, and that related to flow states, ecstatic experience, also things like anxiety.
I just think that's so interesting. I just feel like that sort of mystical state and the creative state and the flow state it's a yin and yang situation,
Yeah.
It sort of brings in the sort of the human energetic field and the element of choice and sort of and of fear, or stepping in, so that the flip side of that very desirable state is anxiety, which is obviously an undesirable state, for the human. I find that very, very interesting. We play a lot of gamma frequencies in our live shows. Anxiety has never, ever once been a response that people have said that they have experienced. And I think a lot of that is the safe container that you create when you're playing these sorts of things, and the desire for outcome, is that a lot of people will use it to ease their anxiety, and I just find it very fascinating to me that they're two sides of that same coin. It almost negates anxiety out of the equation. It's like, are you anxious or are you having a mystical experience? You need to just follow your breath, root in your body, take the message and be brave and create something,
Ultimately, that comes back to, I think what really is happening up there is your brain's super active. It's hyper focus.
Right.
And so where you direct that, it's the analogy to psychedelics, I think, is similar. You can take psychedelics and go to a rave, and most people will have a great experience. Some people have a bad trip. And that's because, it's where you focus. So, if you've got hyper focus kind of turned on and you're focusing on, what's beautiful, or like a leaf, you get that, or your hand, that's like the common tripping thing, is like, you're just sitting there like, whoa, my hand is amazing, because you're seeing it in a way you've never seen it before. But then if you use that same hyper focus to focus on, something you're afraid of, something bad that's happening in your life, then you can spin out on that. And so I think, like Joe said, with live music, with meditations, 99% of the time you're going to have a good experience, because you're going in like, oh, I want to put these headphones on, like in the case of Brainwave entrainment meditation, it's like, these beats are going to make me calm. You're going in with that concept. And so, your intention, I think, has a lot to do with it.
And it's not as strong as psychedelics, it's not something that you're taking into yourself, that you are relinquishing control to, so we can liken it to medicine and physical medicines, but it's actually a much more subtle technology than that, and something that you can really step in and out of. If you were feeling uncomfortable, you could just walk away from the speak, go and look at the sky and calm yourself down. But that isn't an experience that we have had people go through.
Hey, it's Constantin here, and I want to take a brief moment to truly thank you for being a part of this incredible journey of transformation. You are the reason we are creating this content. I see you and I appreciate you. Your support truly means the world to me. I want to ask you for a small favor. I'd love for you to join our mission by hitting like, subscribe, or leaving a thoughtful comment or review. Your engagement helps others discover these insights, and together we can continue to unlock the power of authenticity and personal transformation. And if you want to reach out directly to me, send me an email at constantin@unleashthyself.com. I value any and all feedback. Thank you for being a part of this movement. Now, back to the episode. Well, thank you, Bob. That's amazing. I love listening and learning at the same time. And I can relate with a lot of what you said as well, not necessarily with the brain entrainment, but everything else, the drums. When I was in the jungles of Ecuador last year, partaking in the plant medicine and working with the shamans, I didn't realize that the reason for the drums could be to sync your brain and to get you in that trance. And now the way you explained it, Justin and Joe, it makes so much sense now why in every ceremony, tribal ceremony, going back thousands, tens of thousands of years, they use drums, they use music. And then you mentioned something that really struck a chord with me, just in the idea of intention. And I've realized in life that everything you do ideally should have an intention behind it, because that's when you can really get or co-create whatever experience you want. So if someone, like you said, it doesn't have an intention, or on their mind, they have fear, anything that comes with fear, and that's going to be emphasized.
And I think that comes back to the psychedelic medicine. You know, you talk about plant medicines and taking plant medicine in a safe container, in a natural space, with a guide where you're safe, which is very different from the recreational use, similar kind of psychoactive substances. And again, there, fear is less of a question. You know, a bad trip isn't a thing. You're shown. You know, you're taken to what you need to see. So there's also that sense of trust that there is no bad trip. There is only consciousness, and there is only healing, and there is only the onwards, forwards motion, you know, whether it's spiraling up and spiraling out, you know, of the smallness of our individualized experience. And yeah, I mean, they're all very much sort of interwoven together, these technologies, because you know, you can talk about it, the beats, we use technology, we use computers, but the essence of what we're doing is very simple. It's very much the same thing, you know, because it's a space and it's a trigger for the individual human beings to evolve and expand and do their own work.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, thank you for adding that. Let me ask you this. What would you say the purpose of partaking in, let's say, brainwave entrainment with music, with lights or sounds? What are some of the greatest benefits that people could expect or could intend to have?
Well, one of the things I've been, I spend a lot of time watching the space and what is happening. And recently I was looking at a project that was happening in England where they've been doing large room installations where basically they set up a whole bunch of places to lie down that have stereo speakers on either side and have flashing lights. So they've got the whole light, sound, entrainment. And I was reading through their marketing copy, and they didn't even talk about brainwave entrainment. They talked about feelings generated by flashing light. But one of the things that it said was, the most commonly reported thing by people leaving was a deep sense of peace, right? And I think that when you look at it, brainwave entrainment most often is used in the meditation industry, right? So binaural beats is a form of brainwave entrainment, and binaural beat meditation music is really pretty popular these days. It's just starting, and I think that the Monroe Institute is kind of leading this. They're in partnerships with a few artists, including SilverMouse. They're starting to sort of broaden that genre a little bit, and have done even as far, probably the farthest is like an indie rock album that had signals put on it. But I think that in the traditional use, because they tend to generate this feeling of peace, they've been used in meditation music historically because that's usually the goal of meditation, is this sense of peace. And I think there's room to play there though. So with different beats, very low beats, you can use to put you to sleep, so as a functional tool, for people who have trouble sleeping, you can listen to low frequency beats and it will help you fall asleep. For people that study, and there's companies out there doing, focus and study music, where there is some research showing that playing beats in the kind of standard waking awareness range helps you with memory retention. And so that, you can use that. I think that in our case, we normally are doing a split signal set where we do a low set somewhere between, let's say, 2 and 8 hertz. So even as far down as sleep. And one of the things that I found most interesting when I started thinking about this is that we play electronic music. If you're lazy, right, and you never change beat frequency, which I think we fall into, a lot of our music is at 120 beats per minute because that's like the default setting in music production software.
It's also
a very common setting.
You move, you groove, you're not,
and
you're not like,
and so the range of electronic music might go down as far as 80 for super ambient and up to like almost 200 for like happy hardcore kind of crazy driven stuff. But that middle beat range, 120 beats per minute, is 2 hertz. It's 2 beats per second, which is in the range of sleep. And so then I was like, well, actually all techno music here has this fundamental driving beat, which is in the range of sleep. That doesn't make a lot of sense. You think about going to a rave, you're not falling asleep. Why is that happening? What we're playing with is you have these lower beats. So you have the beat of the music, which is around 2 hertz. And then maybe you play a 4 hertz or 5 or 3 or signal. And 4 hertz is a super popular frequency because it's, Bob Monroe, who founded the Monroe Institute, did a lot to popularize this. And he started just with 4 hertz beats. That was his thing. And because that's right on the edge of sleep and awake. And so his whole goal was, he had started out trying to invent sleep learning. So his goal was to try to, put you to sleep, but keep your mind awake. So your body could rest, but your mind would still be available to engage. And so I think that those low frequencies really tap you into your subconscious, put you in a dream state. If you close your eyes and lie down and listen, you get visuals. Hallucinations isn't the right word, but like dreams, you kind of go into a dream state. And then, so in our live shows, we typically also do then a pretty high gamma so that you're doing the ultra focus and the flow state. And then sometimes you do a signal in between, which is a bridge. And so the end goal of that is to create a tap into your subconscious, activate your subconscious in your dream state, activate your hyper awareness and your kind of flow state, and then create a bridge where those can connect, because often they don't. One of the side effects of listening to these signals that I've found is you remember your dreams more. You listen during the day, you sleep that night. The next day, you've had more vivid dreams and you remember them more. And I think that that's because you're creating this space where you're allowing your conscious mind more access to your subconscious mind.
That's amazing. I mean, it gets me excited. And I know, Justin, you sent me over some of the music you created, and I actually listened to it meditating at night. And now that I think back on the days I listened, perhaps that was the case. I'll have to sit on that and I'll have to try some more. But I was really intrigued by the music you produce, and it's actually very calming because you mentioned the calmness, and you go in that state, you listen. At least in my case, I close my eyes, I have my headphones on, and just lay down, listen to the 4 songs that you sent. And it definitely brought more calmness, more focus after, more sense of joy, I would say.
Right. I think that's, in terms of, for me personally, the why, why Brainwave Entrainment and why in our music. And kind of it's a huge question. There's so much that I can really say about that, but I feel like primarily it's about improving experience of being for as many people as come, as listen, as want to tune in, and it improves the experience of being for me too. As we're playing, we're also under the effects, if you like, of the signals. We're listening to the signals, we're sharing in the experience. It creates a situation where it's not just that we're playing music for you and we're sharing in that energy, but we're all also having this collective experience, and the music that's coming is coming out of that place because it's coming through us. So it just breaks down more of the barriers between people, the barriers between parts of self, the compartmentalization that can happen in the human experience. I'm in this mode when I'm here, or I'm in this mode where I'm there. So it's that alignment and authenticity that is the real kind of, I think, of that work. And then the sharing fully what that means, that we're all sharing this experience. And I feel that that's very reflected at the end of shows, the conversations that we have, the people that we speak with. I love them. They're like the most amazing people. And I feel also that the Brainwave Entrainment, again, the why, we have that compartmentalization of like, I'm meditating. I'm a great meditator. I've been, or I'm working now, or I'm creating now, or I'm, making love now, or what, we compartmentalize all of these things. And I feel that there's the thread that runs through it all. There's the truth of all of that. And I feel that this is what we come down to. A friend of mine just the other day, actually, we were messaging back and forth. She was having a really hard time. So this is an example, again, in the individual, lives of brainwave entrainment, how it can be very beneficial. She was in a kind of spin, she was in a very, very anxious place and had begun a therapy journey, but was just feeling like out of control, like very far away from that place of calm self. And, what can I do? What can I do? And, so we were discussing the ins and outs of the healing journey and therapy. And, your therapist is somebody who's part of your, one of your tools. You're not, you don't need performance anxiety to go to a therapist. You're not being a student here, this is someone that is part of your team. You've got this, you've got all of these other tools you can bring in for your healing. And, and you're already there. These are people to remind you, these are tools to remind you, but that the need for meditation was what came up. And I suggested this app. I suggested listening to some of these tones, not necessarily a SilverMouse set, although I think that could be very beneficial, but really just keying into the tones and some of the guided meditations that are very hypnotherapy based. There are a couple of practitioners who take you on, journeys through your consciousness with their guided words as well as these tones. And her response was really interesting. She said, "Oh yeah, the trouble with my brain, so this negative association, is that I can't sit. I find it really hard to sit and to quieten my brain and to meditate." And then she said, I'm going to work really hard on that. So it was another part of that fragmentation. And it was another way to talk shit to herself, and another way moving away from that sense of you're whole, you're healed, you're here, So I recommended that she go and listen, and she did. And she was like, wow, that was amazing. That I'm going to be doing this every day. Because what it does, that's what I said to her, was you don't have to work hard on anything, right? Some people might call that the spiritual bypass. I call it the simple route, right? The simple route. You don't have to beat yourself up. You don't have to work hard at this. You make yourself a comfortable nest where you feel great. You lie down. You make sure your body feels good. You're not punishing yourself with a rod up your back, like, oh, my knees hurt. Must not focus on that. Empty the mind. You make yourself feel comfortable. You hold yourself. You put this on. You fall asleep. That's okay. Thoughts come up. That's okay. You listen to what happens. That's okay. You're going to feel better at the end than you did at the beginning. You're going to be kinder to yourself at the end than you were at the beginning. And everything comes from that space. Everything positive, everything self-loving, everything self-honoring, everything aligned comes from that place. So then bringing that into the live music environment, why not? Why would you not want to bring that into live gatherings of people who have made the choice that night to come and share an experience with people they don't know? Why not have that beautiful ingredient underpinning that night?
Joe and Justin, thank you. Such a powerful message and story that I love it. So it sounds to me that, if I understand correctly, not only does it benefit you on a personal level when you do it by yourself, but when you're in a group of people, it benefits you. But then because you're part of a group, you now have that bond, that connection that forms at a level that we may not understand. And it allows us to get even more out of it.
So
I think that that's something that nobody has ever really studied. So who knows what the effects are? But I think that from an idea concept, there's your brain and there's the brainwave frequencies that we talked about, and there's tuning your brain. But what does happen when you tune a whole group of people together to the same frequency, right? What does that mean? What does that do for people? And I think that as a musician, the biggest thing that I noticed when we started playing with signals is just that it changed the conversation entirely after shows, from I like your music, or I don't like your music, or that was fun, or to I felt this, or I experienced this, or I really realized this, and that's what I noticed, was that when people talked about the show, instead of talking about the music, they were talking about their experience more, and that was interesting to me.
And that's what's so rich about those conversations, and why I say these people are so amazing. And I love these conversations that we have after a show, because they are such real conversations, because people are open and people are sharing how it made them feel, that people get vulnerable, but not in a, now we're going to get vulnerable. It's all very authentic. And
yeah, I love that. And it sounds to me like it changed from a message of, oh, I like something external to, oh, I like something internal about me now, or what this did for me. And that's so powerful.
It is. It's sort of, in the sense of, as an artist, it moves you beyond the two-dimensional notions of performance, and it moves you into experience and sharing, which is what any art form has as its intention, in its most elevated or most honorable state. We both came from a background in theatre, and the work that we were doing in theatre was always about that place. It wasn't about, now I am a man and I am walking here. It's like, come into the body, come back to the self, come back to the present moment. Like, the minute you're acting, it's boring. It's fake. It's about the authentic and the real, and watching something really happening. But I feel like in music, particularly, because there can be the sort of the mystique of the artist and the groupie kind of vibe of fans. It's very different from the theatre going public, whether that's very highfalutin fancy theatre, or whether that's street performance. There's a much more energetically, the audience is much more engaged on that human level, and in the best music that's also the case. But there's a lot of also that posturing and that sense of sort of adulation, which is not very appealing, really. I feel in the sense of why, when you question, you interrogate that, the why, you can end up with something not, and that's obviously not to say that music, that live performance that doesn't use these brainwave frequencies is just all ego-driven BS. That's not the case at all, obviously. But I think that there is this conversation that, as artists, that interrogating that why is a really essential part of staying aligned with the highest manifestation, the highest expression of your art, and the purest, which is always something about freely sharing and freely giving away, and freely continuing to receive.
Yeah. And I love that message so much. And I love how you keep going back to the why, because it's what I discovered in my life as well. And one reason I'm doing this podcast, it all revolves to the why behind my purpose, what I believe I'm here to do, be in service of others and help. And it sounds very similar for the two of you and the band, because you touched on something very beautiful there as well, which is the idea that you're giving freely, but in that giving, you receive so much as well, because you partake in the music, but also the conversations after and beyond.
In some ways, I feel like being a musician, it's almost, it can be an addictive experience. It can be a great vibe, because even without the signals and without all of this, I've always thought that when I visualize it, and one of the things which recently I've seen more information about, but is the concept of like the torus. So one way to think about it is the energy field. Like, if you look at your body as the middle, and then it goes up and out and down. So it's sort of like an apple, right? Like that shape of torus. And when I think about playing music, I sort of see that turned on end, where it's like you give out as a musician this energy, and it passes kind of through the audience, but then they feed it back. And so actually what's playing the music is not you, but the energy of the audience, And I think that that's also one of the things that the signals help with. I feel like our shows have gotten better, because it used to be, we're a very experimental band, right? We've played a lot of venues. Sometimes you walk into a room and it's not quite right. It's the wrong people, or it's the wrong vibe. And so you're putting out some energy, but they're not really giving it back. It all gets a little weird. Your music is less good on nights unless you're an amazing performer,
All those nights, but we have had shows like that where there might just be one person.
Well, that's all it takes is one person. But I mean,
with this one person who's like, oh, I get it. Then you're having your own little party.
But I think that feedback loop, and so I think that also the signals kind of enable that. Like, the people are kind of more open and giving, and that lets you, as a musician, you're not going to play as well if you're tense. If you're like, do they hate me? If you're thinking about, I don't know, whatever, how long is this going to last? I want to get out of here. Like, you're not going to play your best, right? To play your best, you need to also be in the moment. And so the signals, in a lot of ways, it's like they open you up as a musician, and then you can flow more freely. And then the audience is more receptive. And so the energy you get back, and you get that flow of energy that's really, in my opinion, in a lot of ways, the musicians are the most lucky part of the whole scene. Like, it's well, and that's why I'm a musician. I mean, I think it's the most fun place to be.
I think that's what this happening in our music has made us have a different conversation with place. So where previously we were, where can we get a gig? Where can we play? Oh, this play. And we would play in places like Justin's saying, where, it's like a biker bar in, some weird place in LA. And we're just like, how did we think this was going to be a good idea? Like, nothing against bikers, but it's about, matching the energy and matching the vibe. And what bringing the Brainwave Entrainment has done is underpin the vibe. So it's almost now something, SilverMouse used to be something that was sort of like came from us, but it was a bit like trying to hold a jellyfish, like, what is it? I don't know. And we're just like, oh, and it's an octopus, and it's, escaping from all these places. What the brainwave frequencies have done is create their own container around it. So now it's not even that I'm really touching it. It's just like hovering, and I'm like, oh, where can we put this, So the places that we're seeking and the places that we're going, but not just that, the places who are seeking and the places who are coming to us are the home for this. Yes. So those kind of awkward shows, we are not having those awkward shows.
Yeah, I think part of that is also that our genre, well, we are a genre, basically. Like, we play pretty unique music, and it goes all over the place. I play a lot of instruments. She plays anything she wants because she's an electronic music producer, so she can make a very diverse.
Yeah, it's not like house or tech house, or it's weird.
When we used to try as just straight up musicians to book gigs, it's like, where do you go? Well, we're not electronic enough for the electronic music festivals, and we're not rock enough for the rock festivals, and we're certainly not going to go anywhere for singer-songwriters.
And it's kind of jazz. It's really not jazz.
And yeah, technically it is a jazz structure. We have a header, we have a footer, we have an improv section. Like, it's the same as jazz, but it's not jazz. And we had, we've had people over time. We've had fans who were like metalheads and are like, you guys are so metal. And, but sometimes I'm playing recorder, and it's like, really, like, trying to figure out where that fits in is hard. When you shift it to be like, let's open our consciousness, we're going on a journey, suddenly it all makes sense, right? We're going on a journey, and I might be journeying from a recorder to like playing death metal on a violin. I don't know, but like, it's just part of a path of an evening. And it's like how humans work is you go through different brain states, you go through different emotional states, and we're just going to kind of play with that through sound. And so I think that having that initial opt-in from people of, oh, I'm interested in playing with consciousness, I'm interested in experiencing something new. Well, suddenly, okay, that's the buy-in, not our genre. And that lets you then bypass, like, maybe you hate recorders, but you can get through that bit because you get it, because you're in this, like, I'm on a journey vibe, as opposed to, what have I come to? I didn't want to come and listen to that type of music,
Yeah.
And then the place, we're not really playing bars. We're not really playing traditional clubs. We're playing really pretty unique, largely outdoor, sort of indoor-outdoor spaces that have their own magic. So it's in conversation with that space. People are quite mystified by the place they find themselves in. And then the music weaves the world with the space and with the people who come into the space. So it's really magical, I mean, it really is magical. In terms of scale so far, those spaces, are not enormous, these are still quite intimate rooms of 20 to 80 people really is kind of like the range that these kind of places accommodate, at least that we have found so far. But that's also a really wonderful size of group, where there's enough surprise and spontaneity happening between people you've not met before, but you're not in a sort of throng of like sardines,
Yes. I love that. Oh my, it sounds so magical. Honestly, I'm sold. I want to come see your shows all the way from Canada. We'll talk offline. I'll find where you play. I will come to see at least one, if not more. And I'll share with all my friends and family because this sounds amazing. And I feel the energy coming through, even though we're so far away from each other. And I think you touched on such an important concept there, the idea that maybe in the past you're forcing it, trying to find gigs, places, versus just trusting and allowing it to come to you, and of course you putting that energy out and finding it. And that's a concept that I've struggled with so much, the idea of just trusting the universe, your higher self, God, whatever we believe in, the things will be okay and the things will come in our life for us, not to us.
Yeah, I think that's a completely uniting common experience that we share. You know, we noodle it in our brains. We, as humans, we try to force things. We try to plan things. We try to design it. We try to make it happen in the way that we have decided in our own image. You know, in it, I'm not a religious person at all, but you know, so I may misquote or say things the wrong way. But you know, in Christianity, and in a lot of these kind of world religions, there's that sense of, you know, in God's image or in man's image, you know, and sort of false idols, and kind of unpicking that and bringing that down to its sort of nugget of truth for me is that when we try to build our lives in our image, in this, it's got to be like that. How can I make this happen? You know, it, even if it does happen, you're in this mental kind of pickle. You know, if we trust, which is the most simple thing and the most difficult to do, you know, when we trust, because we're so effective humans. We turn our attention to something, we can really build. We can build to the extent that we build things that destroy us. I mean, we're very, very effective at working and doing, you know, we're sort of like two-legged beavers. We're really fantastic at, you know, at building and making things. So we can get addicted to our own ability to build and to create, where it's the co-creation. It's the trust and the surrender that is the magic in our lives. And you know, I feel that these kind of conversations, they're more and more prevalent, you know, at the same time that we're facing climate change and all of these issues and, oh, man's done this and humans, blah, 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 blah. We're also in this incredible place of human evolution. We have so many of the restraints and restrictions that we've experienced. They're not gone, but we see them.
Yes.
We see them, and we see them for what they are. And more and more and more people are having conversations all the time, and it really is contagious, you know. And there's so much good, there's only good in that contagion, in that form of contagion, you know, the self-activation, the expansion of your ideas and who you are as a person, the trusting, the co-creation, the freedom, the play, you know. It makes me feel incredibly optimistic, incredibly in love with this moment in time that we find ourselves.
And I think that that's, you know, that's also for the why. Why do you do this? Why in live music? And it's something that I've struggled with a little because I'm a Virgo. I'm a solutions person. Every time anything's wrong, I want to fix it. You know, and I feel like that applies to, you know, in a very big degree to the state of the world, right? It's like there are serious problems. And so sometimes I think like, well, what am I even doing? Why am I playing music? You know, one of my favorite writers wrote just the other day this really disgruntled piece about how the world is falling apart and people still are just like want to be like rock stars and this and that. And, you know, and that struck me because I was like, yeah, I hear that. Like, why do I have the right? Why shouldn't I actually be back in school figuring out like carbon sequestration or alternative energy production? But I think that on examining that, and also in the work at the Monroe Institute, their goal right now is to reach 1% of the world population over 10 years. I mean, that's a very lofty goal. It's a lot of people every year, like 80 some million people a year, I guess. And why do they want to do that? And I think that all comes back in the end when I really look at it, and what lets me keep doing it is that it is what all the songs in the 60s were about, right? It's that love is the answer, actually. And that if you can create an experience that unlocks for people a sense of place, purpose, just being in touch with themselves. We're in such a disassociated world, like half of the United States or more is on like drugs to help them deal with the fact that their brain is telling them, run, like you're in the wrong place. And then we label that as a disease. Well, you have depression, take a drug so that you can stay in the wrong place and feel happy about it, right? And I think that at some point, if we can get the conversation around who we are, why we're here, what is this experience? And that really starts with simple, I think for both of us, that was a thing that started in the 90s with drug experiences, right? It was drugs. It was going to parties. You take a drug and you're like, whoa, mind blown. Didn't even realize there's this whole other world out there, And I think that the younger generation now is more cautious, as I see it, more conservative. There's actually less really irresponsible drug use than there was when we were kids. But that also means, like, how are we providing these experiences? How can we keep unlocking the minds, and I think that also at the same time, the young people are being born more open all the time. Like younger generations are more aware and there is an evolution happening. But I think that is actually the only thing that's going to save us. Nobody's going to invent the machine that fixes this. The only thing that's going to save us is actually getting the global population to be like, oh, wait a minute. We need to care about each other. We need to care about the earth. Let's approach this from a place of compassion. And then I think we'll be able to solution, whereas without that, there's
like they say, in sort of parenting and child rearing, you raise your child in nature and you surround them by nature, because we can't save and protect and honor something that we don't know and that we don't love, So of course you bring if your children appreciate the value of trees, if they've experienced the magic of the shade of a tree, of a picnic beneath a tree, of picking apples from a tree or mangoes from a tree, of building a house in a tree, of hugging a tree, they're much less likely to chop down trees in their lives, and they're much more likely to plant trees in their lives. And I think that's kind of what you're saying with that, is that, when we love, we know what it is. We know what we're here for, we know what we're here for, and everything else can sort of melt away. And that sense of the rock star and the article that you read, and, I understand that. And you can point the finger at anybody. You can look around and be like, oh, well, it's not that influencer culture. It's this, it's that. And it's like, well, influencer culture gets a strong rap, for reasons that are understandable. But at the same time, what are these people doing? They're in charge of their lives. They're in charge of their own income streams. They manage their own time. What is it they're trying to do? They're trying to evolve as a human being, and they're trying to be free, right? They're trying to be free. They're trying to be the agent of their own destiny. But if you look at the essence of what's happening, it's a symptom, or it's indicative of the self-activation and self-empowerment movement, really. That you've got young people who are like, I'm not going to go and train for years to do this thing and then go and work in this company. I'm going to do it my own way. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to have the life that I want to live, And when it comes to the scientists and the carbon sequestration and those sorts of lofty things, that's a very small percentage of incredibly smart human beings. And the more they feel there's something to save, the more goes into that work as well. It's just that it's like that thing. You can't go wrong. If people are feeling whole and people are no love, very hard to go wrong from that place. The choices that come from that place
and I think that even when people are asking just the question, and I think that's one of the things with the live shows, live music, you walk into our show, you may or may not know what you're getting into when you come. You probably don't, because there's not a lot out there that's similar. So you probably haven't, unless you've seen us before, you probably haven't been to anything super similar. It's just about opening the path to the question, right? Of like, or the path of exploration. So you come, you feel something, you have an experience, you feel calm when you leave, you feel a sense of peace, or you even, some people have gone as far as saying that, they've kind of almost had full out of body experiences. Like we had a woman come to a show and she was lying up front by a speaker and just kind of, sleeping from my perspective. And after the show, she came up and she said, that was crazy. She's like, I was at a show and I was watching a show and I thought it was your show. And she's like, and then a dog barked and I realized that I was somewhere completely else. Like, so the dog kind of brought her back to actually our show, and whatever show she'd been watching in her mind was a different place. And I think that, so you have a range of these kind of experiences, and really what they do is they open the mind to say, what was that? Where did that come from? And that starts people down a path of exploration. And I think that is really, because nobody has the answers. If people had the answers, we'd just all be enlightened already. Like, nobody's really got that answer. And so all you can do is sort of try to create experiences that point people in a direction and let them then go down that path.
I am beyond excited that you are finding value and inspiration here. Your support means everything to us. If you're watching this on YouTube, take a moment to click like, subscribe, or leave a thoughtful comment below. And if you're listening on our podcast platform, subscribe or leave a review, and it would mean so much to us. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Unleash Thyself Today and TikTok at Unleash Thyself for daily insights and guidance on personal transformation. Your interaction helps others discover this content and fuels our mission to bring even more meaningful discussions your way. And on a personal note, I truly value and appreciate you and your thoughts. Now, let's dive back into this enriching exploration. There's so much more to uncover. Creating awareness, right? That's what it's all about. Like, this side of you that you may not have realized, that's how it started for me. Because once the awareness starts to come in, it's very hard to put it away. So I'll equate it to my, let's say, spiritual awakening. It's almost like if I'm in an eggshell and you crack the eggshell, now the light comes in, it's very hard to close up that eggshell. And that's what the work you do does, right? For people that are at the beginning of this journey or haven't even started, it allows them to now see a different side and say, wait a second, I want more of that. Where can I find it? What can I find? And love is the answer. I love that you brought it up, Justin, earlier. I wanted to circle back to that because that's how I feel as well. And of course, everything that comes with love and everything that everyone can do in relation to love. And to your point, Joe, with a small percentage of, let's say, really smart people that are here to make a huge change, well, if they're surrounded by more love, then everything else is powerful.
Person, place, and energetic form. And we can only do our work. And when we find it and we know what it is, we have to do it. We have to share it. And when we do, like, again, it's like only good can come from that. It's like, and we're not doing this and we're not doing that. And we're doing this.
No, I love what you just said there, Joe. And the way I say it is part of my mission, the way I see myself and what I'm trying to do with the podcast and my videos and content, help people on this journey so they can become the best version of themselves and make the world a better place. And I was challenging the past, like, how can you make the world a better place? I'm like, well, it starts with you. It starts with the world that you have around you. If I'm a better version of who I am and who I was a few days ago, that means that the world around me is going to be better because people will feel that. People will want to be around. People will benefit from it. So all of a sudden, my world becomes better. Now, you do this enough on a large enough scale, like you were saying, Justin, earlier, for the 8 billion people, or not even, probably don't even need that much. You probably need 1 billion. And then it's just going to be a snowball effect, a ripple effect. It's going to impact everyone.
It's really true. It's really true. And then every choice that we make from that place, it's like it grows exponentially in us as well. The better we feel, the better guided our choices are, the better the experience that comes through that choice, the more we confirm what it is to be in alignment and what it is to be in that co-creative present space. So then the next set of decisions, the next choices, the next interaction, like it really is, if you think about it, from a chemistry perspective, we are, all of us are agents of change.
I love that. So I wanted to ask you this, kind of take it a bit of a different direction. What do you see as your ultimate goal with SilverMouse, with the work the two of you are doing, either together or individually? Like, if we were to go in the future, 10 years from now, when you get to watch yourself, like, what are some of the things you wish to have accomplished in the time frame?
Well, I'd like to be doing the same thing. I'd like to be bringing those shows, those experiences all around the world. Maybe the scale of audience would sometimes be those intimate settings of 20 to 80 people, might be settings of 200 to 800 people, probably no bigger than that, but maybe, but it always in conversation with place, always in alignment with that why, not losing touch with that core experience, preserving and honoring that experience, but experimenting with numbers of people, experimenting with place, experimenting with, but outdoor locations or indoor, outdoor locations in all different corners of the world. Language isn't a barrier for our music. There's no lyrics.
Beautiful.
It's completely accessible in any language. So I see that as being something over the next 10 years. I would love to grow those players and make links with other artists too. I would love to collaborate with visual artists who are also aligned on a similar sort of mission of creating incredible experiences, maybe with light. There's a guy, I'm obsessed with his work, Refik Anadol. He is a visual artist. I think he's Turkish. He's very prevalent around the world in different gallery and art spaces. And he uses music in his work too. But I don't think it's music that's necessarily created for what. It's fine. The music is fine. I get but to me, I feel like the music is a placeholder for SilverMouse. I would love.
There we go. That's a great vision.
Right. I would love to work with him and with these sort of melting, incredible digital spaces where you walk in and you're just like, where am I? But you're not actually. Like, we've played in the Earthship and in these sorts of different incredible structures, and, we're blessed with beautiful outside environment. But the spaces that Refik works with can be urban,
Yes.
intensely urban. They can be warehouses. They can be, cubes in a place that's actually very stressful. But people are working there and living their lives there and still needing these experiences. So you can come into an inside space where somebody with these incredible visual skills creates these melting, amazing landscapes that are interacting with the music that we're making and the tones. So I have ideas for collaborations.
And I think that's one of the challenges kind of ahead of us as you travel and as we grow, right? The easiest way to grow is to play where people are. Where are people? They're in cities, right? Some of the magic of what we're doing is that we're in Puerto Rico and we're in rural Puerto Rico. We're not in San Juan. We're, out in nowhere. And a lot of the places we play somewhere, but compared to what a lot of people consider urban, we are not on the map.
No.
Our whole island's not on the map. Like every home in Puerto Rico falls under the, whatever it's called, FHA, Farm Home Act. Like the whole island is considered rural. So I think that one of the challenges for us, we play at this place called the Earthship. It's magic. It was made by a ton of people over a couple of years. And I don't know if you know about Earthships, but it's a building methodology where you compact trash into tires. And so it's all recycled. You're sinking a bunch of trash into the earth and you end up with amazingly beautiful spaces. We're lucky to have this place. And it's, in almost a rainforest right on a river with these huge, beautiful trees and this amazing buildings that are sustainable. They do all their own water collection and it runs fully on solar. And it's so it's really a cool thing. And you invite people to this setting and it's got a high degree of magic. So then you go to New York City to play a show because there's a lot of people there. You think that, we can access this audience. How do you create that same degree of magic in that urban environment? And I think that's one of the challenges in front of us is we've kind of got the easy train here. We can just show up and play. And because of the set and the setting and everything surrounding it, it's magical. I think that as we move into bigger audiences and more traditional venues, you have to ask yourself, how do I bring the magic, right? How can I transport that feeling into other venues to allow people to have the same experiences? And there's definitely people doing it. I mean, we met at an experimental physical theater, a place called Double Edge Theater in Massachusetts. And I think of them and what they do with theater. And I think of Cirque du Soleil and what they do with theater and circus. And I left the theater because I was tired of having my music dictated by the timeline of a performance that wasn't about the music, right? Okay, now you got to play this. Now you got to play that. It's got to be this mood. It's got to be that. Oh, quiet down. Somebody has to say something. There was all these rules all the time. And I just wanted to play. And that's one of the reasons that I left the theater. And I think but I loved the theater. And I feel like that's also part of my vision is well, how could we reverse that? How can we bring the theater back, but where it's at service to the music, as opposed to the music being at service of the theater, and create these performance spaces. And, another project that we've talked about that I think there's kind of a flip side of, we're even looking at maybe creating 2 different booking pages for the band and doing one for a concept that I'm tentatively calling like dream theater, where we do something similar to the project I was talking about in the UK. You know, there's this light base. They built their project based on the, you know, when you have like a lamp and it's got strips and they spin, and so it creates this like spinning light effect.
Yeah.
I can't remember what they're called, but also creates a brainwave entrainment frequency because the lights are going at a certain speed. Your brain syncs to that. You know, but I think a similar idea where you could come in and actually the space is yoga mats and pillows. You're invited to lie down and we actually take you to the dream space and do performances there. You know, I think that that's one possible way for us to perform, as well as, you know, come and dance, hang out, do whatever. We often have a hybrid at our shows anyway. Some people dance, some people lie down. It's kind of people do what they want.
And I think the urban, you know, it's an interesting challenge how to, for everyone living in urban spaces, everybody who is looking for authentic experience in the urban environment, you know, how and where is that happening? And in the same way that, you know, the dandelions and grass is coming up through the cracks, you know, you've got to be very vigilant as a municipality to kind of quash all the green things, which I think a lot of cities do. But when it comes to humans, you're kind of playing whack-a-mole, if that's what you're trying to do, because we are always seeking the light. We're looking for the places where we can gather, and we're looking for the places that bring hope. When you look at cities like Detroit in Michigan, you know, which was, when was that? The economic crisis. What was it that happened there? The car industry fell away, and unemployment was horrific, and you know, homes were being sold for sort of $10,000. But what came into that space was an incredible self-activation of the people in Detroit, and it drew people from other areas as well who were into regeneration and regenerating that space and creating farms in that space and becoming a sustainable city that, you know, runs at their own food system. And artists are drawn to that space as well. So, you know, looking at where I think, you know, we have a lot of these amorphous sort of visions over the next 10 years. But when it comes down to the how and the what, I think it really comes down to this gift of this being that is the work itself, and continuing, as we have been doing, continuing to follow the energy. We're getting closer all the time. Like we know our people. We just don't know them all yet.
Yes.
Right?
It sounds like, you know, you need to do a lot of trusting. There's a trust.
Yes. And reaching out and not being hurt when the things you reach out don't come, but continuing to reach out and continuing to reach out to the places and the performance spaces that really resonate, and thinking outside the box with it. You know, what about a community garden? What about an abandoned church? These don't need to be bars. They don't need to be nightclubs. They don't need to be places with a booking guy, you know, who's getting, I receive, you know, thousands a month or whatever, you know, but really thinking about where the home is for this work that we do, but really expanding that reach, you know, and really share it, partly because it's super fun for us, but I think it's what it's I know that it's work it wants to do.
Yes. I love both of your visions and how aligned they are, and I can't wait to see and talk to you in 10 years as well, and of course before then, but see how far you've made it with your visions and intentions. And I'm sure the sky's the limit, to be honest. And this type of work, I think, Joe, you touched on this earlier before, but we are in a state where people, especially the younger generations, realize that this is not working for us. Like, we see our parents, our grandparents working to the bone, maybe retiring, maybe not, because they don't have money. And we don't want that for ourselves. We don't want to be on the hamster wheel. We don't want to suffer, to your point, Justin, with all these mental health issues that we have to take pills for to numb ourselves down. And people are waking up. And that's the beauty of this, because the more you do your work and together we do this work, the more people will hear and will listen and will begin their own journeys at their own pace, but they will. And at the very least, seeds will be planted, and they may not sprout tomorrow or the week after, but maybe in a year or two, they will blossom into something beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it comes back a little bit to what Justin was saying earlier about, you know, for us growing up in the sort of 80s and 90s and the kind of experiences that we had, the partying, the recreational, you know, the Gen X kind of way of being young compared to now. And I think a lot of it is that the kids now are like, I haven't got time for that. I haven't got a decade to party in a warehouse with a bunch of people for the sake of partying and figuring this shit out. I don't regret anything that I did in the 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s, not a bit. But I can appreciate that if I incarnated now, I wouldn't be doing that because, for one, they're already more awake. I had to go through that to get to where I am now. A lot of these kids, they don't have to go through that. They're already there and they don't have the time. And we were rebelling. We were rebelling a little against, the hamster wheel and this way of being and that way of being. In a lot of ways, there is no rebellion now because the things that were offered to us as the normal were at least secure. Am I just going to go and buy a house and get a job and have a secure career? No, I'm going to do something else. But those things aren't even really available to young people anymore. The secure job, the secure career, the house with the picket fence, like that.
The idea of a safe retirement,
the idea
where you
of
just
safe-
know you're going to be paid
Yeah.
for the rest of your life,
don't exist. So they are on their own and they know they're on their own and they're awake. And that's a powerful and mighty generation. So I'm interested in being 85 and playing music with these guys and their kids because they're where it's at,
Yes.
absolutely. Maybe the wrinkly ones in the room, but like they're where it's at.
Absolutely, 100%. And that's the beauty in all the work that's being done now is that, yes, people are on their own, younger generations are on their own. But really, with what you do and what we do with the podcast and beyond, it's building communities and bringing people together so they realize that, yes, you may have your own journey, because we all do, but you're not alone. We're in this together.
Exactly. You're on your own together. Oh,
yes.
Okay.
Exactly. Oh, I love this show, Justin. I could talk to you all day long, honestly. But we need to get close to wrapping this up.
Yeah.
So before I let you go, let's chat a bit about where people can find your music, can find more information with you, or even book you if they'd like to bring you to a city.
We have a website. Justin works really hard on the website, on designing it and keeping it, up to date. So that is silvermouselive.com. There's information on there. Justin's written a few articles as well that kind of go into a bit more information about the brainwave entrainment, the details that we've been talking about, different perspectives, and also different dives into some of the signal sets that we use, the recipes, if you like, and, more about that. So that's on the website. There's also Instagram. We are SilverMouse Live. We're Gen X, so we still also have Facebook there as well.
And on all the streaming services, we're just SilverMouse. So basically on social media, we're SilverMouse Live. And on, Spotify, Apple Music, we're SilverMouse. And, the other thing that your audience might be interested in is, that's not us, but that's the work I do with the Monroe Institute. There's an app on Apple and Google. It's called Expand. And it is, it's got a whole load of free
It's
meditations that you can use and experience the entrainment. And our website also has a good collection of stuff that you can listen to and get an idea of what the audio tech is like. But, if you listen to the interview and you're fascinated and you go to our website and listen to our music and don't like it, you might want to check out the Expand app because it has, it's more traditional meditation music. It gives you the experience.
And it's free.
Awesome.
And it's free.
That's even better. That's awesome. I can't wait to try that as well and continue listening to your music. And before I let you go for the day, is there anything else either one of you want to share with the audience? Maybe something we haven't touched on?
As a call out, really, where we are at right now, if anybody is interested in hearing us and having us come play, they should not be afraid to reach out and ask. Like, that's how we're coordinating shows mostly, is by individuals saying, we want you here, and looking at where they are and figuring out
how to get there.
Basically, we're just trying to get to as many places as possible. And if we can cover our travel costs, we'll pretty much come and play music for you, is our take on this right now. So
and thanks to you. Thanks for having us. It was great.
It's been my pleasure.
Thank you.
I've learned so much, and I love your message, the both of you, and what you do. I can't wait to follow your journey and see all the amazing things that will happen. So I want to thank you, Joe. Thank you, Justin, for reaching out and for coming on the show. And thank you to the audience for sticking with us and learning so much as well. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration of personal transformation. Your presence and engagement are at the heart of what we do, and I sincerely appreciate you, your time, and thirst for knowledge, inspiration, and empowerment. Please consider showing your support by hitting like, subscribe, leaving a comment, or writing a review. Your engagement not only fuels our mission, but also helps others discover these insights. For more daily guidance on personal transformation across the mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical realms, be sure to visit our website at unleashthyself.com. You can also find us on Instagram at Unleash Thyself Today, TikTok and YouTube at Unleash Thyself, and there we post daily content designed to inspire and empower you on your journey. If you have any specific thoughts, questions, or feedback, I truly value your input. Or if you'd like to have a conversation with me or work with me, please feel free to email me directly at constantin@unleashthyself.com. I would love to hear from you. Together, we're building a community united in authenticity and purpose. Once again, thank you for being a part of this movement. Until next time, continue to embrace your true self and live a life on purpose, with purpose. See you in the next episode.